Hi, I'm Earl Rynerson and I'm running for mayor of Fort Lauderdale. In this video clip I want to talk a little bit about what I consider to be the top 10 failures of Mayor Jack Seiler during his last 3 years in office. The first and by far most important issue that he has failed on as mayor is his lack of budget control and his lack of fiscal responsibility with our city's all funds budget. He has had no leadership on this issue. Our city's budget this year is now $635 million, which is almost double the budget of other cities our size across the United States. And since he's been mayor, he's allowed this budget to increase by over $35 million. So no fiscal responsibility, no budget control, and no leadership to help guide the commission to understanding the problems associated with out-of-control spending, and no leadership in helping to look for ways to reduce our city's budget. The second element, the second failure of Jack, is the fact that not one of his budgets over the last 3 years has been balanced. Jack will not admit to this, but it's true. Jack has had to go to our city's savings account, our city's reserves, and take over $25 million out of our city's reserves in order to balance the budget over the last 3 years. When Jack became mayor, our city's reserve was at almost $80 million. Now it's right around $50 million. In the forums that will be coming up here in the next few days, Jack will be talking to the audience members about how our city's finances are solid and how we have $50 million in reserves. But what he will not tell the attendees is that when he took office, we originally had $80 million in the reserves. So he spent about $30 million just to try to balance the budgets over the last 3 years. Third failure of Jack is the fact that he has allowed our pension costs to spiral out of control. Currently, our city's pension is over $1.2 billion, and of that amount, almost $400 million of that is unfunded. That means the taxpayers are going to be on the hook at some point for paying for that $400 million pension liability. He has not put any initiatives in place or even brought up this publicly about the need to make changes to help reduce the pension weight that's around our neck. Fourth failure, Jack wasted more than 2 years before finally locating and installing a qualified city manager. Jack waited until 3 weeks before George Gretzis was set to walk out as city manager before even bringing the issue up at 3 a.m. on a July morning, weeks before Gretzis' departure, to bring up that issue and about what are we going to do to find a new city manager. He should have brought this up months prior. He should have started a process to find a qualified city manager instead of waiting a few weeks prior to Gretzis' departure and then in a rush pick a lady, Allison Love, who was just as unqualified as George Gretzis. So we essentially have gone through over 2 of the 3 years Jack has been mayor with an unqualified city manager, someone who has not worked for ways to lower our budget, lower spending, and to reduce the overall cost to the taxpayer. That's a really big failure of Jack, and it shows just how leaderless Jack actually is. Fifth failure is Jack's continued insistence on not laying people off and on continuing to pay salary raises to the city's employees. Our city's employees are very well paid. Most, if not all of them, receive more compensation than the average Fort Lauderdale resident. Yet he has, in his 3 years, each of his 3 years, continued to hand out pay raises to the various segments of our city staff. The sixth failure of Jack is his continuing support of big business over neighborhoods. Most of you may remember 2 years ago that we had an opportunity to look for alternatives for electricity for our city other than continuing to work with the Florida Power and Light organization. There were a number of groups here in the city who wanted an objective review of all of the electrical options that our city's residents could perhaps look toward other than another contract with Florida Power and Light. Jack Seiler squashed that debate and pushed for and got signed another 30-year contract with FPL, and now we're seeing the results of that with higher electrical fees. He's also ignored advisory boards. Our own budget advisory board now has, for the last couple of years, warned Jack Seiler that the spending spree that he has had over the last several years is unsustainable and that we have to cut back. We cannot take money out of our city's savings account to balance our city's budget. Jack's ignored that advice. He's ignored advice from a number of other agencies and boards in our city, and we are now seeing the results of that. His eighth failure is just a general lack of leadership and a lack of vision. Jack has not been able to articulate over the last 3 years anything that would be considered a vision for Fort Lauderdale. I've written a 20-chapter document that covers 20 different elements of Fort Lauderdale and what I would consider to be an appropriate starting point from which to engage in a vision discussion. Jack's not done that. He would rather spend $300,000 of your money to hire an out-of-town consulting company to come up with their idea of a vision. Jack should have taken this issue on day one. He should have come up with his own vision and then encouraged others to help modify that over time. His ninth failure is that even small things are not getting done in this city. And the reason we're not getting even some of the small things done in this city is that we don't have any money. We are spending all of our money on salaries, pensions, bonuses, personal take-home vehicles for city employees. We do not have any money to spend on any individual projects that will help us as residents. And a good example of that is the War Memorial Opera House. For those of you that have driven by, you have now for years seen a rotting structure, wooden sign structure out there that looks like something from the 1940s. That thing should have been replaced years ago with a modern, updated digital marquee. That has been something that neighbors in that area have been asking for years. It's something we should have spent money on years ago to get corrected and put in a new marquee, a new sign, something that would be more modern and showcase more easily the venues that are going on in that location. But we don't have the money for that. That's just one example of numerous examples of things that we should be spending money on in the city that we can't because we don't have a balanced budget. Last thing about Jack is he's a career politician. Jack craves political office. Most people here acknowledge that he ran for mayor simply because he wants to use this as a stepping stone for higher political office throughout the state. Jack did not even own property when he ran for mayor here, and he did not even purchase property until after he was elected mayor. What I think we need is somebody who lives here, who works here, who's passionate about this city, and who can get involved and make the changes that we need to have made to help our city improve itself down the road. Thank you.